Welcome to our next scenario of General D'Armée. We're playing, jumping back in time today to play the scenario from the 100 Days Army Scenario Supplement and playing Quatre. This game is the one that my 28mm armies are based around, so we should have all the forces we need. We'll kick off with a quick overview of the table and the initial deployment at and around the village of Quatre by the Dutch-Belgian forces. We start with the Nassau infantry. This is the 28th Orange Nassau Battalion in French uniforms, and we have two of them in Bossard Woods, supported by a battalion of the Nassau in their traditional green uniforms. Shot from the front. Unfortunately, again, there's a lot of light at the back, so I'm not sure how well these ones will come out. Alright, and then as we look up the table, we have the village of Quatre itself. Some more Dutch holding the village. Militia battalion there, two more militia battalions. You may just see in the photograph they're behind slight rises here before the stream that runs into the little village currently garrisoned by the 27th Dutch-Belgian Jaeger Battalion. And then we have some Nassau rifles in support. And there's the rest of the 28th Nassau, Bossard Woods, backed up by a Dutch artillery battery. As we swing round, you can see the extent of the Dutch deployment. They are heavily outflanked at the moment. And over here, we see the start of the French forces. We have a Lancer Brigade, just started to come on the table, 2 regiments. Then we have the first of 4 French infantry brigades as we go down the line. That completes, I think it's Foy's division. Then we have the 2nd Light Cavalry Brigade. These are Chasseurs de Saval, the 1st and the 6th, who fought at Quatre. The 1st with their German-style helmets, and the 6th, more traditional French Chasseurs. And then Jérôme's very strong infantry division. These are the 1st and 2nd Léger. 6 battalions we've got fighting there. I think they actually had 7, but I've actually got 6. And then we have the 1st and 2nd Line infantry regiments in his other brigade facing off against the Dutch. So as usual, as we have a fairly narrow table, only just over 4 foot wide, clearly the French have done some approach marches, so we'll do some pre-game artillery fire and some fire from the garrison at this strong point in the centre of the table, and we'll come back to you as we start what in reality for the game will be turn 3 of a scheduled 18-turn game. Right, we've moved on to turn 4 just to complete some movement. There hasn't really been any firing yet, so completed turn 3 and on turn 4. As you can see, British reinforcements arrived at the end of turn 3. The Pax Brigade has arrived on the right flank, and they've taken in turn 4 one move forward, starting with the Royal Scots on the far right. Then we have the 2 Highland battalions. Look at those. Here you can see the Highlanders, and they've just moved forward through the Dutch foot battery, which as long as you don't land on top of them, you can do without penalty. And there's the 44th Essex, These are now moved up to support the right flank of the Dutch, who have deployed more of their battalions in line and moved forward slightly to the edge of Quatre. And their other Dutch battalion is moving forward to reinforce their line on the left. Meanwhile, the Brunswickers have arrived in the middle of the village, headed by the avant-garde. They've gone into skirmish formation to move slightly faster. So they're marching out to the far left flank, supported by the Brunswick Light Brigade, which is just entering Quatre. On the French side, the French executed a forwards move order, but unfortunately only rolled a 6 on 3 dice. So the Lancers are moving out on the far left flank. Both regiments in one brigade, supported by the first of the French infantry brigades. In the centre, 2nd Infantry Brigade of Foy's division and the Chasseurs both suffered a hesitant result in their approach marches, so they are one turn behind. Whereas in the centre, around the Gemincourt farm, you've just got the French starting to cross the stream, throw their skirmishers across the stream. Their infantry battalions are starting to cross and making ready to assault the farm, still defended by the 27th Jaegers. And then as we look over to the far flank, the final French brigade of Jerome's division is approaching Blossel Woods with the Nassau defenders. So we'll move on with firing in turn 4. Okay, so we've just completed firing in turn 4. Not much happened. Some exchange of fire here between the Nassau battalion in the woods and those French troops. You might be able to just see approaching them through the trees. They remain supported by another Nassau battalion behind them, and the 3rd Nassau battalion also exchanging fire with French skirmishers. Otherwise, British again have regained initiative, so those Brunswickers in the centre will continue to deploy and the British probably move forward, and a couple of French brigades, unfortunately for the French, have gone hesitant. So we'll now move on to movement, then firing in turn 5. So turn 5, pretty good move for the Dutch Belgians. This battalion here in the woods has successfully repelled the charge of that French infantry column, so they're still secure in the woods and still exchanging fire with the French skirmish screen. Those French infantry battalions of that brigade are poised to come over the hill. I'll see that next turn, I think. Over in the centre, not much happened. The Dutch Jaegers still hold the village, exchanging skirmisher fire and winning definitely against the French skirmish screen. They've now lost a couple of bases. The British infantry brigade has now moved up and is now well away from its own guns, so they'll be able to fire over its head, and are supporting the Dutch line. So if the Dutch fall back, they can reform behind the British screens. I think they're all just more than 6 inches away. We will check that to make sure that's the case. And the Dutch artillery battery now looks like it might get employed, firing at those French as they come over that hill. So good solid line of British infantry here. The rest of the Dutch formed a line just south of these hills, and their skirmish screen is engaging in fire now with the French skirmishers, but the crossing the stream has slowed down the cavalry and the infantry brigades as we look along this flank, so attack taking some time to develop. On the left flank, the French lancers are moving around, but we do have some brave Dutch-Belgian hussars to face off against them, just behind the avant-garde battalion. Meanwhile in the centre, the Brunswickers continue their march to the left flank, and their artillery has started to deploy in the rear of that column, while their line brigade has now occupied Quatre itself. Let's pull back, do a shot of where we are at the end of turn 5. So the Allied troops, the Brunswickers and the Dutch Belgians, forming an arc to cover that left flank, and the British robustly holding the right flank On we go with turn 6.
Right, we just completed turn 6. The Nassau Battalion in the woods is still holding firm, exchanging fire with the skirmishers. In the centre here, the French assault has started, so one battalion has charged in. The Orange Nassau 28th Regiments volley fire caused the column to halt. They did a weak volley of musket fire at the Dutch and have been held off. Over here, the Nassau skirmishers, or riflemen, have Jaegers actually I think, have caused some casualties on that attacking French battalion there. Big developments in the centre though. The French column was successful and has charged into Gemincourt Farm and has pushed back and caused a retreat on the Dutch Jaegers. Only caused one casualty, more than the Dutch, but has successfully pushed them out of the farm. On this flank, the remainder of Jérôme's brigade is now starting to cross the river, so we'll see that assault carrying on in the centre. The chasseurs have remained resolutely hesitant, still on the wrong side of the river, don't fancy coming into the face of all these Dutch infantry battalions, a bit confused. Otherwise there's been heavy exchange of skirmish fire between the two lines. The French skirmishers are now peppering the Dutch with musketry, and otherwise very much remains as was. So that's the end of turn 6. We're going to take a break here and we'll come back with more of the game after we've had our lunch break. There you go, just a shot of the whole table. Interesting to see, very much the game remains in the balance.